How's it going, fellow Joker fans? Welcome to my Joker 2 Folie Deux video. If you're wondering what this video is about, when the announcement dropped, we did a video breaking it down, exclusive from the Hollywood Reporter, saying that not only is Lady Gaga in talks for Harley Quinn, but also that sources say that it is a musical. So since then, we've been racking our brains thinking about it. I thought I'd let the dust settle a little bit within our minds, and I posted to my community tab, similar to that of the Batman discussion series and other discussion series that we do on the channel, and you guys submitted a bunch of things that you wanted my thoughts about. So let's crack open Joker 2 Folie Deux and start with question number 1. By the way, like the video, it really does help me out with the YouTube algorithm, and hopefully we can get other people's interests and just collective thoughts on Joker 2 coming more and more into the channel. Because, by the way, subscribe if you happen to be brand new here, because we're going to be covering the movie with every little update there is to the big updates. So, Lucian Bergman says, do you think it will still keep the dark and grimy 70s tone of the first film? Or because of this being a musical, will the tone completely shift? I believe they will do musical scenes in the hallucination/drugged sense, and the story/movie will keep a similar tone. Now, when we first got news of this, I did say that whilst I really do see the merit in musical aspects to this movie, with Joker and Harley Quinn, Folie Deux being a shared madness 4-2, etc., etc., I did say that there would be scenes in between. And what I mean by scenes in between is that, of course, we're going to get musical numbers throughout the movie, but I think with the shock and awe of this news, because as I went over in my breakdown video, long story short, a movie that is already controversial with lots of fans saying, do we even need a sequel to Joker, is always going to be more controversial when it's like, you know, out of left field being a musical. So I was just like, calm down, people. Like, you do realize musicals do have dialogue between the musical numbers as well. So getting to the point here, for your question, is that I do believe we will have really dark tones in this movie still. The musical numbers are going to lend to all kinds of flamboyant, absurdly chaotic kinds of things that is Joker and Harley, or should I rather say Harleen on the way to Harley, that will be in this film. But I have to think as well that we've had dark musicals before, don't get me wrong, but I do think that this has the potential to be like the most like on-screen live action darkest musical ever attempted. I know that sounds like, oh, come on, Bob Rez, but I'm talking about Joker and Harley here. Think about the dark, really dark scenes in Joker 1. Yes, this is taking a different direction, but that doesn't mean just because it has musical numbers in it that it can't get into all of the sick and twisted things that is Joker and also Harley Quinn. Because if they're going about it in some sort of faithful adaptation to some super traditionalist canon, it is not a pretty sight to see. The madness, the delve, the spiral staircase that Harleen goes down with Joker. And I'm sure they're going to take some creative freedom to add some innovation into that story. So it won't be copy and paste, but no matter what way I look at it, it has to be dark. But I think there will be contrasts, as well as, obviously, as I was saying, you know, this really absurdly, you know, over-the-top, eccentric kind of Joker and Harley singing at times, as well as dark numbers, you have to think. So as you said as well, you think they'll do musical scenes in hallucination, drug sense. Of course, yeah, Arthur could be heavily medicated. Who knows how this could blend onto Harleen as well. I mean, we'll explore that in other questions. But, you know, as for, like, relying, this is my last word on this, relying on the 70s dark tone of the first film to be echoed throughout this film, I wouldn't say get your hopes up for that or anything. I'm not saying it won't be in it, but I do think with the opportunity this movie has now being branded a musical from inside sources at the Hollywood Reporter, is just that I think it will keep like a consistent tone of the real world scenes in terms of when the musical number breaks and they're back to dialogue. I think that will hopefully, in my opinion, and this is what I want as well, maintain the eerie kind of realistic, kind of realism-y creepiness of that ending Arkham interview scene, But then, for sure, like, reach for the stars when it comes to musical stuff, because that can be completely imaginative, drug-fueled, and God knows what else. For all we know, there could be different kind of genres the movie, like, jumps to, with each kind of transition between musical numbers and the evolution of Harlene's delve into madness. And maybe the genre of the movie will change as she changes, you know, one quarter at a time until, you know, the fourth quarter is filled and she is just wholly mad, if you will. But again, that's I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. The Road to Positively Unstoppable says, I feel like the musical portion will be used to show Joker and Harley's descent into further madness, and that could potentially be brilliant. I agree. Like, as I said, just to interject on even reading this out, it is shocking when you first hear about this musical thing, but then when you apply it to the characters, and if you are really a fan, even like me, not a massive fan of musicals, but you can't discredit the merit and creative vision that they must be striving for with this pitch. And as I said, Todd Phillips always had to make it boldly different from the first movie to make it kind of relevant for a sequel. Anyway, as far as a question, though unlikely, will we ever see a Batman appearance? I know Bruce was young in the first flick, but who knows how much time has passed? Although Joaquin is a bit up there in age, he's fairly younger in appearance, so they could ski the timeline a bit to make this happen. On the other hand, though, with the Batman sequel in the works, and more than likely Joker will be in that as well, perhaps there'll be too much. Thoughts, George? Thanks for asking that, George. This one is relevant because in Joker 1, we literally saw Arthur Fleck meet Bruce Wayne at the gates of Wayne Manor. Obviously, the Joker riots, if you will, were an origin for the random thug that, you know, pulled the trigger on the Waynes, which is, you know, relevant in of itself. I know not everyone loves that, but sometimes Joe Chill is a criminal, as Alfred even puts it in the latest The Batman movie. He couldn't guarantee it was Falcone who got Bruce's parents killed, because it could have been anyone in the street who was too desperate or a little bit too desperate for money that one night. It just is shitty luck, to put it bluntly. So they did set up Bruce in, I would argue, an almost significant way in the first movie, because he wasn't like significant to the plot, but Bruce to Joker and Joker to Bruce are significant to one another. So they made his presence be felt in the first movie, and they set up that origin, which was pretty cool. Now, as for a presence for a Batman appearance in this movie, I don't think so. I wouldn't count on it, let me put it that way. But I just wouldn't rule it out, and I don't want to give anyone hopes through saying this, but I wouldn't be surprised if they keep the amount of time it's been ambiguous, right? Between the first movie and the second movie. Let's just say Bruce in the first movie was like 10 to 11 to 12, absolute tops there. If it's 8 years in the future, you could easily say like he's very, very, very early Batman. I do agree with you as well, and this is one argument I've always said, that Arthur Fleck with Joaquin Phoenix could be aged down in terms of what Joaquin Phoenix is in real life. You could easily put him down a little bit, because everyone's like, oh yeah, by the time Bruce is Batman, he'll be like in his late 60s, 70s Joker, and I'm just like, not really. You could easily make him out to be like a 37, 38-year-old man who smokes quite a bit, so that's why he might appear mid-40s kind of thing, and, you know, add 10 years onto the first Joker movie. It could actually work out, and I offer a little counter to everyone who enjoys Jack Nicholson's performance. Well, he was like 50-something when he played the Joker. So do you know what I mean? It could actually work that way. But I'm getting a little bit off topic now, because we're talking about a Batman appearance in the second movie. So you could argue, yeah, like this could be 8 to 10 years later, and Arthur, you know, more or less looks similar. You could use a bit of movie logic to that. And before any of you think, Boba, why are you entertaining this? Why are you saying Batman's going to appear? He's not going to appear. Like, and hold your horses. That's not what I'm saying. I wouldn't be surprised if, just if, and only if it's been 8 to 10 years, that there's some kind of TV and it's mentioned on the news that there's some kind of bat vigilante, and this is my only way I can imagine Todd Phillips entertaining any kind of Batman appearance in this film, and that is through one of the musical numbers, whether it is, as we've already discussed, maybe delving in this descent into madness on both parties, or let's just say it's Arthur's. For this musical number that I'm about to give an example of, is that through a drug-fueled trip or something, that after hearing some reports, this, that, and the other, I don't know, that there's some kind of like dark bat in a dreamy, very vivid, colorful vision. It's just nothing more than that. As far as an actual Batman appearance in Arkham State Hospital, Absolutely not. I would be absolutely gobsmacked if that happened. Even if it has been a good 10 years and you could argue a Batman is out there, that doesn't mean that he would appear in Arkham State Hospital to visit any kind of inmates so we actually see an appearance, or even outside an Arkham State Hospital scene if you want to argue, yeah, but in between the musical numbers, we could get some perspectives around Gotham City. Like, obviously, we saw Arthur Fleck in Gotham City a lot in the first movie, so we could see it through maybe Harleen going home to her apartment from Arkham State Hospital or something like that. I get what people are saying there, but again, I really don't expect that. The only absolute limits, and this is if you're lucky, if you regard this as lucky, if you even want some kind of mention in the first place, the absolute limits, I think, of what we would get is some kind of news report on Harleen Quinzel's TV that there's a Bat vigilante in the first couple of years of his career, or at the very best, some kind of, and even this, guys, would be some kind of like abstracty kind of art hallucination in Arthur's madness kind of musical number, that there would be some kind of bat resembling silhouette in that of a very theatrical filmed scene, which obviously we're going to get really, really theatrical filmed musical scenes, and I can imagine some kind of bat just flying over or something like that, but it means nothing more than an Easter egg. I don't see any reason to particularly concentrate on Batman in this movie. I think it's 110,000% just heavily going into the very fabric that makes up the folie à deux, the shared madness of Joker and Harleen Quinzel. Next up is from Gabriel Collins. Hi, Boba. My question is, how much in this movie do you think we'll see Joker and Harley Quinn? As in, them both wearing makeup. And do you think that the whole movie until the end, they will be in Arkham State Hospital? Love the videos. Keep doing a great job. Thank you. So this one, man, this is one of those ones where I really couldn't say it one way or the other, because let's just jump to the end there. I think, obviously, a large part of the movie is in Arkham State Hospital. It's kind of like the Mad Love story, from that of adapting it in the source material slowly along the way. Harleen becomes Harley. And maybe, just maybe, this is where they could stay in Arkham State Hospital at the end, and it could ironically end with Harleen getting thrown in there with Arthur. But at the same time, you could argue that she might break him out, and then yeah, they could go into Gotham. Now, that's not something I've really thought about too much with this movie, but the more and more I think about it, like, that is a very relevant thing to do, because often, you know, Harleen does get to the point of becoming so infatuated with him, right? She breaks him out of Arkham, and then they like go dancing off in, or driving off into the sunset, so to speak. So you could, I didn't really, again, I know I've already said this, I didn't really think about this too much. I don't think it would be, if, let's just assume that happened at the end of the movie, I don't think it would be a long chunk of the movie, but in a similar way to the Joker riots, and then, you know, the Murray Franklin talk show when we actually got Joker own it, the last part, I could see them only, assuming if they do break out after obviously Harleen has been completely compromised and into Harley Quinn, the Mad Love is now for sure a shared madness at this point, that the last 15 to 25 minutes of the movie could be another Murray Franklin talk show / Joker riots portion of the movie, where they've now broken out and they are on the streets of Gotham, and that's when I could see them in Joker and Harley makeup, as in the real world. Now, that is only, I know I've said this a few times, assuming if they break out, which I do want to say is 50-50, because, you know, just to mention it again, after the infatuation has been truly buffered to 100% on the video loading bar for Harleen to Harley Quinn, it is very plausible that she could indeed help facilitate the Joker's escape. But in terms of seeing them in makeup, of course, it could happen way earlier. And why, you may ask? That is because in these musical numbers throughout the movie, you have to think, even by, like, the half point of the movie, when clearly at this point she's starting to realize she has some kind of feelings or some kind of infatuation, or she can't really figure it out. In these daydreams where, you know, we've still yet to discuss the perspective of who this movie will be viewed by. Is it going to be Arthur again or Harleen? You could argue that easily or, you know, both of them, by the way, which I think is a very likely one. You will see when they're on stage, they're going to be transported into these clothes, they're going to have makeup on, and you have to think that the Harley to his Joker will be in some kind of adaptation of Harley Quinn, you know, jumpsuit or, you know, makeup. I have no doubt that will happen. It might be innovative in the same way that the Joker in Joker 1's makeup was. It wasn't cliche like Joker, but it had, you know, it was still clown Joker makeup. I actually really dig the makeup that Arthur Fleck had towards the end of the film. But I digress. Getting back on point, you know, they could be transported to a musical number and then really, like, it's over. And then she's like, Arthur, Arthur. And then he snaps out of it as he's smoking his cigarette. And they're just at the interview room table again. So I think there's loads of opportunities to see Joker and Harley Quinn in that sense. But as for a real sense, I think that all depends on if Harleen helps break out that man from Arkham State Hospital. And again, the more I'm saying this, I think that is an insanely likely ending. And then potentially setting up a Joker 3, because as we said, not that Todd ever thought like all 3 movies were going to happen. You have to still make the first one, right? But he did pitch Joker as like a 3-movie thing. He said that himself, and he did say with like 3 different directors. Long story short, as always with these questions, as in them both wearing makeup, how much will we see them as Joker and Harley Quinn like that? I reckon quite a lot, and we'll get all kinds of different looks with different musical numbers, of course. But that will be in between the kind of real life scenes of dialogue, I'm sure. And then maybe actually seeing them for real in Gotham City, driving down the road, crazy as a pair of Jokers. I don't freaking know. Okay, so Rod Heyer says, do you think that this movie can somehow be from the perspective of Harley Quinzel slowly becoming Harley Quinn after having Joker as her patient? Yeah, 100%. Said this since the first video I've done. As soon as we were before we even had Lady Gaga confirmed to be in talks, you know, as like she's negotiating landing the role of Harleen, we only had Folie Deux to work with, right? And some people were going out there with various theories, and fair enough, like this is what it's all about, right? Saying, okay, Folie Deux might not just mean Joker and Harley, it could mean the madness for 2 with regards to Joker and Bruce, could be Joker and Joker, because a lot of people liked Willem Dafoe's idea of a copycat Joker. For me, not so much. I've had enough of that for a lifetime with the whole Gotham, Jeremiah, Jerome, Jay kind of thing. And for me, I was sticking to my guns. Folie Deux just means, to me, shared madness. What are you going to do if that's the pitch for the movie? Joker 2, Harleen Quinzel. It's the most obvious one, and that was the case. And ever since then, the reason why I set that up is because I've been saying since then that how about, you know, the first movie was from the unreliable narrator of Arthur Fleck. The second movie, it just makes sense to add a little bit of a twist on it, especially with the absolute, you know, palpable kind of thing you've got going on here with how much you can really morph your second movie and make it so interesting, and that is the sanity of Harleen. Do it from her perspective, because at the beginning of the movie, you're going to have her in a sane-ish, sane level, right? Where it'll be fairly, I guess, like the first movie, as we were going over earlier in the first question or whatever. The 70s-esque tone, picking up in the clean Arkham State Hospital. Perhaps she is the replacement therapist for Arthur after he killed the woman at the end of the first movie. But as we have the movie unfold, as I said, in almost these quarters, right? We see the actual narrator go from reliable to almost as unreliable as the first movie through the shared madness to Folie Deux. That's what I mean by this kind of palpable kind of, I can taste it. I can feel how there's so much potential. Despite some people like a musical, screw this, I'm out. No matter what, there is so much potential for such rich storytelling here to make it such a fascinating project to film. I would love to be involved in this creatively. This kind of story, a shared madness of Joker and Harley, I know I keep repeating this just in different words. There's so much to tap into there. Even as I said, starting sane at the beginning. You know what? Don't do it from Arthur's perspective right away. Do it from Harleen Quinzel's. Maybe you can bounce between both perspectives. That's another neat thing you can add into the little casserole you're cooking up here, because then you're like, wait, so whose perspective is this? Is it Arthur's or is it Harley's? And with Harley's, maybe she's the one who's so into music and musicals or something, and that's why we get these flamboyant kind of musical numbers and shows that transport them into this otherworldly kind of thing, like in Birds of Prey, when we had Margot Robbie's Harley kind of do that musical thing. But at the same time, as Todd Phillips has always said, Arthur has always had music in him, and it's almost like they were teasing like the idea for the second movie, because they went into, you know, even from when he was dancing with the advertiser board at the very beginning of the movie and he got the shit kicked out of him, like he was, you know, dancing, and he's been dancing in the public bathroom. So I believe you're gonna have some perspective of musical numbers from his mind. Maybe they're like the really dark ones, and maybe Harlene's, as she's delving into Harley, are the more romanticized ones. I don't know. Yes, I keep getting carried away here. I've kind of already answered the question. I do think it will be from the perspective of Harleen Quinzel, mostly as she's going to Harley Quinn, and that could be a really interesting thing to watch unfold. It's almost like watching a kettle boil. At 1 minute, it is just water, and then the next, it's starting to simmer away. The next stage, it's starting to boil, and then the fourth stage, it boils over if you don't take it off. It's like you're watching something unfold, and there is so much to watch unfold here that is just only one of the few reasons I have a lot of faith in the creative vision that Todd Phillips and Scott Silver have put forward with, you know, even going as bold and absurd as doing a musical for the second movie. So yeah, I know I'm going crazy there, but with answering your question in so many different ways, but yeah, the perspective thing really has me, as you can tell, locked in. All right, so from Spring 6, I'd like to see more of how Harleen is responding to the Joker, maybe through an audio log of her slowly falling into madness as we watch her and Arthur have their sessions. Maybe not so much a love for the Joker, maybe an unhealthy obsession. That is, again, like, as I was saying earlier, innovation, right? With adaptations, you don't have to copy and paste. You can do the premise there, basically, and then you innovate on it. You add your own things in there that can surprise old fans and new fans alike. So we have the basic premise of a Folie à Deux, which is the madness for two, and we obviously know that entails that Harleen Quinzel will be, you know, combining in that madness that Arthur Fleck / the Joker has in of himself. Like, it will be spread and, you know, shared with Harleen. Now, yeah, you could just say, what if it's from a psychologist who is just so intrigued in this patient? It's not really maybe even from a love standpoint at the beginning, right? She becomes obsessed with him, you know, from a clinical perspective. And there have been some similar stories to this, actually. Now, I'm not talking exactly the therapist, you know, Cate Blanchett played in Nightmare Alley with Brad Cooper, but something where it starts off in a similar way to her, with how she was quite fascinated with his mind in that, albeit, you know, the motive was quite different, as we learned as we went. I don't want to spoil the movie for anyone, but I think it could start as a bit of an obsession, as you're saying here. Maybe not so much a love, but an unhealthy obsession. Albeit, I do think they will go there eventually. They don't have to, and I could be wrong about that. It could be more along what you're saying, but I do think for yourself to get involved in a shared madness with the Joker like Harley does, at some point along the way, I think you must just get so lost like she does, where there's this almost, like she feels like she belongs with him in a sense. That could be seen as love, but I would like for this film, with what you're suggesting here, for them to present it as this multifaceted way. Maybe not so simple, straight up, oh, Mr. J, I love you, but maybe some more like, hey, yeah, starts off as a clinical obsession. There's maybe little tints and, you know, clues here of like the love side, but it's presented that there's this link that is way more, as I keep saying, multifaceted than just simple, oh, I adore you, Mr. J. It clearly starts for one reason. It could go for that selfish endeavor of that of Harleen's, to the point of where she gets in way too deep and it becomes something that she didn't even recognize or even sign up for, but it's already too late. But I would like to see, yeah, you know, the more I'm talking about this one, again, I don't mind it getting into love at all, because that's usually the mad love, hence the title of that being a big thing about Joker and Harley. But it would be really cool and also suit the very dark nature that the first film had and what capabilities they have to get into with the relationship between these two characters in the second movie, if they explore the whole aspect of it, how he maybe somehow already has her in this Stockholm Syndrome-y kind of way, despite him being the inmate. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. But if it will lead up to her breaking him out, you have to think that is kind of a Bonnie and Clyde thing. And if it does go that route, there must be this unwavering loyalty that must stem from a bit of feelings, if you know what I mean. Even if those feelings weren't ever intended to, you know, even, you know, begin in the first place, because it started from a completely different corner in Harleen's mind. But the Joker got his grips on her. But this is what I mean. Even though we have clues, Folie à Deux, we know Lady Gaga is in talks to be Harley Quinn. There's so many routes they can honestly take it, so many. And that is one of the most exciting things that I'm anticipating, because one of the things that I always say with this, don't have expectations. Don't think that, oh yeah, okay, I'm used to the musical idea now, and it's going to be straight up mad love where Joker and Harley is just going to be like, oh, Mr. J. I don't think anyone should expect that. Expect the unexpected and enjoy what you can with this movie, and then see what vibes and what doesn't vibe, or see what sticks and what doesn't stick. But I'm ready for, just like the musical thing being the surprising aspect, I think even the fact that we know that Harleen is going to be the other character attributed to the Folie à Deux, the shared madness of Joker 2 Folie à Deux. I wouldn't be surprised if Todd Phillips and Scott Silver, with writing that screenplay they've already done, also subverts people's expectations with the way they even adapt Harleen and Joker's origin and their descent into madness. Could be completely faithful but new at the same time, and could also be based on many kind of different versions. Bleep Bloop says, dreamlike scenarios while in a therapy session with singing/killing. Sort of like Sweeney Todd in the beach scene. Would be pretty cool overall. Looking forward to it. Exactly. A lot of people have referenced Sweeney Todd on my videos when talking about this, and you get it. But like, imagine even darker. There is dialogue, just like there is in that movie. But there is also the way that the songs pick up naturally in the kind of overall vibe that is the movie. It fits. I mean, that's what musicals are, right? Even in something like The Greatest Showman, you have the dialogue scenes, you have Hugh Jackman doing his thing, and then it might just break out in a song. Hence a musical. I think people just keep thinking, and this is what I think some people are jumping to conclusions with. I know I've already briefly spoke about this, that Joker 2 being a musical would just be like singing and singing like every single second, but I really don't think that's going to be the case at all. But Sweeney Todd is a very good example. I mean, you could even liken that to, let's just say that we've got to the point with Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix's characters that she's breaking him out of Arkham State Hospital, because at the third quarter of the movie, towards the last act, if you will, we have her more or less fully converted. She wants to break her Mr. J out, and you could see the singing and killing aspect in their very grand theatrical way of escaping Arkham to be like, again, I'm not a musical guy, as I keep saying, but I'm almost like musical nerding out over that. Can you imagine? Like, again, I don't want to keep like referencing these other movies in the sense of it's going to be exactly like that. But remember, like in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, when Harley was just going down the corridor, there was like flower petals going everywhere. Think grand, but grander than that, of Joker and Harley kind of just going throughout and doing something, if and only if, by the way, she is helping his escape out of Arkham State Hospital at the end. I could be completely wrong about that. I don't want people to think that what I'm saying will absolutely happen, because that just sounds like, how's that anything like the Arthur Fleck from the first movie in a tone of that? Again, I think it will be in between certain scenes, in between numbers. But at the same time, don't forget, with a musical, with shared madness, with the Joker, with Harleen and Harley Quinn, you have a comic book couple there, or two characters that are insanely theatrical. They are very theatrical characters. I should not have to explain that one. So I do expect out of this world, eccentric, over the top kind of moments where it might not even reflect the nature of the reality they're in as they're escaping Arkham. All of these things could be happening, just like how in the Suicide Squad there wasn't really those flowers there, it's just what Harley was seeing. Obviously, there's going to be things attributed in this movie that play out like that. Not exactly like that, but you have to think there's going to be like what I said earlier. If you have them in the interview room, they could be escaped away to this scene, like the stage almost gets pulled away. Obviously, within our minds, we know that this isn't really happening. It's just within one of the characters' heads. So I think it will be like Sweeney Todd in the beach scene, especially if they do get to a point of killing. That's the thing. We still don't know right now how far along this timeline is going to get. Is the whole movie going to kind of be like Joker 1 in the sense that we only get Harley Quinn in the like final 10 to 15 minutes of the movie when Arthur went onto the Murray Franklin talk show and says, hey, can you introduce me as Joker? That was right at the end. One of the complaints, even though I really, really enjoy the movie, some people, and I think this is fair, wanted to see a little bit longer with Arthur owning that Joker character, albeit I understand the execution. Todd Phillips wanted him to only achieve that arc towards the end. I get it. It's like a character study from a man who had not one bad day, but quite a few bad days and became that character. But with this one, we don't really know exactly where it's going to end. I do think that it could end in that escape, as I said, setting up the third Joker pitch that Todd Phillips has had in mind, ever since the beginning. He didn't know or think or plan for it to definitively happen, but he had an idea for 3. Either way, as usual with these questions, I'm getting way too carried away, but dreamlike scenarios while in therapy sessions, 100%. I think that's... I always say don't have expectations, but that's one of the low-key ones. I'll say that. If you have an expectation for that, fair enough, because you have to think something like that would be happening. For all we know, by the way, they could try and do a similar movie to that of the first one where, as implied at the end, Arthur was in the hospital the whole time, and that was just being told to the interviewer. Every single scene we saw in the movie may have happened in the past, but could have just been told to the interviewer. Or it could have all happened, more or less, and then he ends up in Arkham after being caught by the cops. This is what I mean. There's so many variations of the Joker movie. So the second movie could continue with another story of Arthur out there kind of thing, but he's just telling it into the interview room with Harley Quinn. It's just every now and again we follow the real world scenario, then it comes back to the interview room, and then the next real world scenario we see could be from Harley's perspective. This is what I mean about 2 different perspectives, but then you inject musical numbers throughout that. There's so many ways for this movie to go. So RJ Dark Knight says, I think Todd Phillips needs to use the same sort of music in the first Joker in order for the musical to be successful. I hope he uses the same tone of darkness. What are your thoughts? I do agree, and I think the music from the first movie should definitely be used again. I don't mind if it completely contrasts the really, trumpet kind of, as I kept saying, eccentric kind of theatrical, dissolve the stage into Joker and Harley, or Harleen at this point, all dressed up in some imaginary situation. Maybe that's drug fueled from Arthur's perspective because he's being medicated in the hospital. Who knows, right? I absolutely love the darkness of the first movie soundtrack. I think it is impeccable. Some people hate on it, but I do not understand. I think the first movie soundtrack is the most sinisterly brilliant compliment to the character study that Todd Phillips was trying to achieve. I wouldn't want the soundtrack to be in any other way. And I do think if this movie, as I said, whilst juggling, shall I say, the crazy kind of eccentric scenes of God knows what Harley's perspective will be as she's falling in love with Joker, but when we get into some real dark, twisted things, as I said, that this could set the precedent for the most darkest musical ever, with all the things that it has to tackle with their relationship, potentially, and God knows what we'll see, that you should have some echo of that of the first movie soundtrack. It does remain possible in the real world scenes of dialogue that we could get that, of course. But I just wonder if they will be able to blend those scenes well with the contrast of what I can imagine to be as I keep demonstrating, a very out there crazy song choice, right? Where it's absolutely nothing like the depressing tone of the soundtrack of the first movie. But that doesn't mean that still wouldn't work. Do you know what I mean? That's why I keep entertaining this. You could even have a song that literally goes along with the dark strings of the first movie, even to maybe some of the echoing same themes. Susan Storm says, as long as Gaga plays the female lead, I'll be happy. I just wanted to chuck this one in here because I really love the idea of Lady Gaga being Harley Quinn or Harleen Quinzel. That's one important distinction to make because she's going to start as Harleen, if not for even most of the movie for all we know. And again, there's so many opinions on Gaga. It's very fascinating to me. Again, I'm not really into, and I've said this before in my other videos, so much her earlier music. And don't get me wrong, some of them are catchy. I'm sure Joker Face is going to be a meme for quite some time now. But I'm more into her album Joanne and things like that. I don't really listen to it a lot, but there's been a period of time when I was checking it out. Even outside of that, my opinion on her in general, musically, whether you like her or not, objectively, she has an insanely talented voice. almost incomprehensible. It sounds like I'm a huge fanboy, but I'm honestly not. Like, I'm just stating the facts here. Like, whether you're a big fan or not of Lady Gaga, she is incredible. And as an actress, by the way, an actor, I think she is very good as well. I've been watching her way back in American Horror Story, I believe season 4. I actually thought, oh wait, that's Lady Gaga, she's doing great. And then A Star Is Born, I thought she did a really good job. And I just chose this question because I know there's a lot of people like, screw Lady Gaga. I know you may have wanted Ana de Armas or someone else or whatever, but just take it from me. If you hold value, in my opinion, I do endorse Lady Gaga if the talks do fully complete and she is cast as, Harley Quinn. I think she won't only be amazing for the musical numbers, because this movie is a musical, as we're hearing, but she will be a good Harleen as well. One who I think she'll show her acting chops more so when she starts cracking. I think she'll play a very, very, very intriguing performance if we do see those cracks get more and more maniacal as things unfold in the movie. And someone like Lady Gaga, who has a lot of confidence with her acting, I think she'll nail that. I really do. From the professional Harleen side to the Harley Quinn side. And I think that leads into my next and last question I'm about to get into, from Victoria Genevieve Elizabeth, saying, do you have an idea of the version of Harley they will adapt? And in your opinion, what version of Harley would you adapt? So in my mind, not really referencing, I mean, maybe I will reference some things, of course, but with this Harley or Harleen, I think Lady Gaga, and I think castings, even though they're an actor, in theory, just because they're cast doesn't necessarily, give you the foresight of seeing exactly how they'll play it. Because they're an actor, they're meant to be able to adapt to whatever role, right? If they have good range. However, with Lady Gaga, I do have a direction I would go. Just jumping to the Harley comparison, I suppose, like Margot Robbie is, in my opinion, I really like her as Harley Quinn in general. You guys know what Margot Robbie's Harley is like. However, I don't think she's gonna be that. I don't think she's going to be like, nice to meet you, or anything necessarily like that. And that's not to like get anyone's expectations down, because I already know it's like, oh, don't worry, Bobo, I don't like Margot's Harley anyway. Or someone might be like, oh, but I really like her. I'm just saying it will still be a very relevant Harley. And I'm not saying she won't be really kind of eccentric in Harley towards the very end of the movie. But I do expect this woman that Lady Gaga will be playing will be professional at first. I think she'll be quite down to earth. I don't think she'll be too stern or serious, albeit she might start off that way. But once Joker and Harley, or Harleen at this point, are building a rapport, I do think she'll become more personable and charming. And she'll slowly, kind of like the Mad Love in the animation in a sense, start to let a little bit more of her personality through, which is unprofessional, right? But that is what we will see. And as I said earlier, you will see, even unbeknownst to her, she might not realize that she's already got him in her mind without her even realizing how much those hooks are firmly cemented in there. But again, I do expect Lady Gaga, especially with the age she's at, the kind of demeanor she has in general in some of her roles, and that's not me saying she doesn't have good range, but I genuinely see her kind of presenting as, okay, Arthur, being nice enough to him, being fascinated with him more and more as the sessions unfold. And then again, as I was saying, her demeanor slips a bit, getting a bit, admittedly, maybe to herself, unprofessional. She might have to check herself a bit, but as the madness starts to seep in, I do feel like her maniacal side, that is very true to Harley. Like, even I know Margot's has come out of that in the DCEU. She's crazy, but it's not as like sadistically maniacal, even though she has had that side, of course. I feel like Lady Gaga could be scary, really scary, as just like Arthur was in the first Joker movie. I don't think they're going to take away from that. I do think they'll bring the fantastical side of Harley in this movie, especially with some of the musical numbers, of course. I think they will like decorate that like fireworks in certain musical numbers. But when we get to like the straight up, this woman who came in there to be a therapist, fairly, as I said, charming, fairly professional, obviously, as you would be. But as the film unfolds over the minutes and tens of minutes that goes by, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes, let's just say it really gets to the cusp of the transformation. And maybe we see more of a madness demonstrated in a musical number than that of what is actually in reality, because it's easier to show her doing something crazy in like an imaginative musical number than what it is set in the interview room, right? I think Lady Gaga, whether you watch even some of her performances, she can be this charismatic, very Harley or Harleen to Harley-esque kind of role, but then you almost see this kind of, she takes another form, and I think we're going to see this really interesting change in her, just almost similar to the kind of really shy, somber, unconfident Arthur, to the very, you know, almost as if he was anointed and imbued with some kind of confidence, you know, as he was at the end of the movie, that just completely transformed this character. I know I'm going around in circles at this point, but I just see it in my head that we're going to start off with Harley Quinn, a nice enough woman, just doing her job, but I think she will be more formidable than that of your DCEU Harley. And that's nothing against Margot Robbie's Harley, but I do get the vibes from this Harleen, Lady Gaga, there's going to be a split, there's going to be a change that really, I call her formidable, but I think she's going to be intimidating, less kind of, oh, you know, hello, Mr. J. I think that would be in it, but like, I'm talking like, you know, really, like, you know, the kind of Joker Arthur Fleck who, you know, did what he did in his apartment to his colleague. That kind of scary. I think we could see a twisted side to Lady Gaga that she could really give across in that performance to show that she's capable of that same thing. And with the expression that you can get into with musical numbers, and as I said, all of these kind of stage prolific like things they can do. And as we know, Lady Gaga has done that in real life with real big performances of hers. You can only imagine what that could mean for like this Folie à Deux shared madness between the Joker and Harley. So my opinion is that I think this Harley, I know I've gone around in circles with this, is that she won't be much like the DCEU Harley, albeit just like two different Batmans, if you will, are different, yet they're still, you know, plucked from the same kind of flower, so to speak, but are just different strains. Here, with Harley, I think you're just going to have a similar situation. Two different types, just like different Jokers we've had in iterations, but given that we're going to have so much more screen time with this character, Harley Quinn, literally with the origin of her shared madness with Joker, Folie à Deux after all, we're going to get into such in-depth. I think this will also be a character study as much as it is a musical, just like the first movie, for that of Harleen. I think once that transformation happens, it's going to be almost tragically messed up to witness, but when she comes out of the other side and she's blossoming as this new version of her, I think it would be just as fascinating as it is to watch. It's almost like you kind of want to look away, but it's too hard to look away, and I think that's how compelling her transformation will be. Just like in a similar way, it was really hard to not watch the really tense scene of what was happening with Murray Franklin and Joker on that talk show. It's just like, wow, look at what he's become compared to the little Arthur Fleck at the beginning of the movie. So I know I didn't really answer your question properly there, like, you know, what idea of the version of Harley would they adapt, but I think it's going to be a really serious one. And when I say serious, by the way, I don't mean like, oh, she's not going to have any kind of Harley tones to her. She's going to be like, hi, nice to meet you, Arthur Fleck. Oh, and then she's like, oh, I'm obsessed with you. No, not at all. I just mean the adaptation, the lens. You know, it's charming and lovely as she may be at the beginning of the movie, professional and stuff. The filter and the mature tone of the writing we're going to get into is going to be so much more seriously tackled than that of like the DCEU one, you know, where it's a bit more like everything was kind of like skipped forward a bit and then, hey, there's Harley, you know, with my baseball bat. So I don't know, guys. I would love for you to expand on everything I've discussed so far. I'm really excited to hear what you guys have to say about this. I know we're going to get quite a few comments. I mean, that's if any of you have even made it this far. It's like, oh man, I don't even care about Joker 2. But for those of you who have made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you're along the ride for me, along to Joker 2 and, you know, what it brings us. Who knows? It might suck. But I, at least for now, am most certainly reserving judgment. And if anything, I'm looking forward to and intrigued for what the creative vision is. At the end of the day, they didn't write this for memes. They have a lot of faith in this. Todd Phillips wouldn't do this. Joaquin Phoenix wouldn't be down for it if they didn't think there's merit in this. I know there's money, but you know what I mean. Like, there's creative vision that they do see potential in, and that is what I see as well, especially as a big lover of these characters. So expand on my thoughts, of course. Let me know what you thought about some of my takes, and just add your own theories in there somewhere in the mix. If you'd like to see one of these, if you'd like to see another one of these, let me know down in the comments below, of course. And I think that's everything. So subscribe, like the video, would really appreciate that. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow jokers and clowns in the next video. Goodbye.